Hoisting that 50-kilo log onto his shoulder, you could already glimpse a new tough guy rolling in the making. The brand new 2026 season of Alone has officially kicked off. The first 5 contestants have already launched in style, turning their survival skills into a full barbecue feast. In this episode, we'll walk through the early strategies of the last 5 contestants in detail. Next up is Likey, who's dropped by helicopter at the edge of the wilderness, then flies away without a glance. Left alone to face the Arctic wilds, Likey feels excited and happy.
They dropped me off in middle of nowhere. You hear that?
But as he stretches out on the ground to enjoy the wilderness freedom, he suddenly realizes the mosquitoes are more numerous than he imagined. If he lingers, these bugs could almost devour him. Likey first scouts the area, quickly mapping out the water, land, and animal paths to help him pick a shelter spot. Lake's an outdoors natural. He even launched a wilderness survival school with his brother, sharing the hard-earned skills from years in the wild. He knows fishing inside out, and the moment he hits the riverbank, what pops into his head is, what a perfect fishing hole. But then he notices the ground is stamped with bear and wolf tracks, and a chill runs down his spine. Studies estimate 4,000 to 5,000 grizzlies in the Northwest, which for a newcomer could mean a shot at hunting big game. When he and his brother explored and survived in the forest, they saw bear tracks. Hunting a grizzly has always been Likey's dream. Yet compared to grizzlies, it's the mosquitoes here that scare him more. They're constantly probing at his eyes and ears. It's not the sudden, lethal threat of a predator, but it's even tougher to get away from. Oddly, once Like ducks into the nearby brush, the mosquitoes swarming his eyes and ears suddenly drop off dramatically. At this moment, another problem is bothering him. Like is feeling extremely thirsty, but the river water is far from clear. If he drinks it straight, his gut would likely fail him well before hunger ever did. Unable to boil water right away, Like improvised a temporary fix. He poured river water into his waterproof boots and dangled one end of his scarf down into it. He used the fabric's capillary action so water seeped along the fibers. It might strain out bigger gunk and some parasites, but tiny bacteria and viruses would almost certainly slip through. Like only turned to this risky method because, in his 10 personal items, he'd swapped a fire starter for a shovel. His other 9 items were a sleeping bag to keep warm at night, a pot for essential cooking, a knife and a saw for making tools, and a heavy focus on hunting gear, a bow and arrows, snares, gill net, and fishing tackle. For Likey, this isn't just about the prize. He wants to show the world there's nothing he can't do. But as soon as he said it, reality was already slapping him in the face. Mosquito swarms went for every bit of bear skin, endlessly swarming his eyes, ears, and nose. Eventually, he had to yank on a head net and cover his whole face. Staying on the riverbank another minute felt like he'd bleed until he was anemic. So Likey didn't stay there. He turned away and pushed into the forest, starting to set up his hunting traps, because food is the real trump card in this survival game. Close to camp, Likey started setting out lots of snares and traps, fully aware that bow hunting wasn't his strong suit. So relying on passive food gathering was vital for him, and using the gill net and rod to fish would be his main focus going forward. Back at camp, Likey noticed that the site was affected by the tides, making it unsuitable for long-term stay. So he chose a new spot for his shelter, because once winter truly arrives, sunlight will become a scarce resource. A south-facing camp can get longer hours of light and hold on to a bit more warmth to make future water runs easier. Likey paced the shoreline, scouting a good spot, beyond direction and distance to the source. He needed to judge whether the spot had good fishing. Unknowingly, Like had already covered 5 kilometers and eventually came across a spot that would work for a long-term camp. What really drew him in there wasn't the level ground under his boots, but the broad, open lake before him. For Likey, who's not skilled with a bow, the lake means opportunity. Whether he's fishing or setting a gill net, this lake might turn into his steadiest source of protein. Once he finally settled on a spot for his long-term camp, that nagging unease in him eased. The next morning, Like went out to check his snares, and to his surprise, they'd really done their job. The snare trap had successfully caught a rabbit. It's not a lavish meal, but it's crucial.
And tomorrow, there's gonna be a rabbit.
Because today, Likey's moving camp, hauling dozens of kilos of gear and slogging 5 kilometers through riverbank mud. Each step saps his energy, but today's rabbit catch steals his confidence inside. Once at the new camp, Likey skips resting and immediately starts gathering materials to make a fire. Only with fire can he enjoy that delicious rabbit stew he's dreaming of. But the rain from last night has soaked everything around him. The wood is damp and the tinder isn't dry. Making fire is the last thing Likey wants, because the process is brutally exhausting, yet he has to tackle it anyway. Like builds a bow drill, and when he rapidly pulls the bow, the spindle spins against the fireboard, producing thick smoke. But soon his arms give out, and the spindle can't keep enough friction to make heat anymore. After his first failed attempt, Like adjusted his posture. He was about to begin his second try.
come up. I think I have it. I have it. Okay. Don't die now. Simply too wet here.
His second try failed too. His drilling couldn't keep the spindle turning, so it never built up coal. The wet ground and humidity made the bow drill fire even harder to pull off. Those tries wiped Like out fast. His wood choice was off, and the air was way too damp. Without conditions lining up, fire wouldn't happen. Like had to start treating the fire problem seriously. He crammed his fire-making materials inside his clothes, using his body heat to dry the wood and drive out the moisture. As Likey was stressing over how to get a fire going, the snares and traps he'd set started paying off with welcome surprises. Every morning he was catching a rabbit, and so far, Like had 4 rabbits. He was straining and still couldn't coax out a spark, while animals marched into his snares with no fire. No matter how much food, it was just for show. He must have regretted skipping the fire starter during gear pick. He'd stashed yesterday's fire bundle in his sleeping bag to keep it warm. Now they felt much less damp than yesterday, so Likey tried the bow drill again. Since catching that first rabbit 2 days ago, lighting a fire had turned into a desperate race against time.
That I'm going into this competition without ferro rod, and I see now it is definitely a risk. So much wet conditions, and I know that if I don't get fire for a very long time, at some point I would have to tap out.
After relentless effort, Like at last coaxed out enough embers. He set the embers on his waiting setup, then grabbed a handful of dry tinder from inside his clothes. Just then, the embers were about to die, and Likey didn't dare blow on them. He figured simply keeping them aired would be enough. Holding the embers' heat was crucial this time. As the smoke from the tinder grows thicker, Likey keeps blowing on it to increase air circulation. Ultimately, he wrestles a flame out of the drenched wilderness.
Fire! Woo! Bam! We are eating bunnies tonight.
With this fire, Likey regains control over his own survival. These 4 rabbits can finally turn from game to food before spoiling. He needs to work through them fast, but still prepare them the way he likes. He cooks 1 rabbit as stew and hangs the other 3 on a rack to smoke and store. He takes the rabbit entrails, puts them on skewers, and grills them. 3 methods, 3 distinct flavors. Likey's early game is impressively smooth, but one note from the producers darkens this easy start. In Alone's history, no one has ever won without bringing a fire starter. Right now, Like is still enjoying this almost dream-like start, but his real trial will be the brutal winter still to come. Next up is Booth. The moment he lands, he's already going over his gear, muttering to himself that he mustn't lose anything.
One of the first things I'm gonna do, I don't want to lose anything. Don't lose your stuff, don't lose your stuff. I lose my multi-tool, I'm just done. Game's over.
What he cares about is the multi-tool knife. To ensure he doesn't lose it, he clips it to his waistband, and only once he's sure it won't come loose. Only then does Booth start scouting the area. As a high school principal, he's always thrived on challenges. Whenever he has free time, he goes out hunting. He's taken moose and black bear, and he's also a survival enthusiast, well-versed in building shelters and making hunting traps. Booth once ran a fishing guide service company for 23 years and has caught all kinds of fish. So when he reaches the river to scout around, he instantly recognizes it as a prime fishing spot. The seemingly calm river surface may be hiding immense danger. It is autumn in the Arctic Circle, and moose and rut can easily mistake humans for rivals. Grizzlies near hibernation are ravenous. To Booth, moose and bears are not only threats, but also opportunities. The beaver tracks on the bank catch his eye, prompting him to form a plan to hunt beaver. But a sudden, intense thirst drags Booth back to reality. He quickly collects wood to boil river water. As he waits for the pot to reach a full boil, a harsh, despairing crackle snaps him fully awake.
Fire. Damn it!
After starting the fire, Booth had carelessly laid his ferro rod near the flames. Focused on quenching his thirst, he piled on wood and buried the rod, realizing only after it was ruined. Worse still, although Booth is well-read and highly skilled in both hunting and fishing, primitive fire-making is the one skill he lacks. The irony is that at the start, he kept warning himself not to lose any gear. Now, by his own carelessness, he's cooked his fire starter and made it useless. Let's pause here to explain why a ferro rod can be destroyed by fire. A ferro rod, or ferrocerium rod, is composed of very reactive metals. It's a flammable alloy that spits sparks when scraped. But under prolonged high heat, the metals oxidize and the rod dies. Misfortune always seems to pick on those already burdened. Booth is suddenly plunged into despair.
I can't believe it. I'm in the Arctic. I gotta have fire. I can't drink this water. I can't cook my food. I can't heat my tent.
The moment the ferro rod was ruined, What he lost wasn't just a single tool, but his whole survival rhythm, broken clean in two by the wild itself. He spends a sleepless night, mind racing over how he's supposed to carry on out here. Even in this brutal environment, dropping out never even occurs to Booth. For now, moving step by step seems like the smartest approach. Maybe things aren't as bad as he thinks. Booth dismantles his temporary shelter and opts to put up an A-frame permanent shelter here. It's not that people pick an A-frame because it's cozy or comfortable, but because it's simple enough and reliable enough. The two sloping sides serve as both walls and roof. Rain and snow run off slanted sides, and though inside isn't big, it's better at holding fire's warmth and body heat. In northern wilderness near winter, a shelter need not be as spacious as a house. If it keeps you warm, it's enough. With the shelter done, Booth grabbed his bow and arrows and went out to hunt. The beaver tracks he'd seen on the riverbank yesterday had him dreaming of smoked meat. If he managed to take this beaver, the meat alone could keep him eating for weeks. Booth studied the beaver's landing route and set hunting traps along the paths it used. By now, he's already fantasizing about smoked beaver meat. With no ferro rod, Booth can only risk it and live off the river water. Last night, Arctic rain fell, and the puddle on his tarp was the purest water Booth had tasted in days.
Arctic rainwater. Not bad.
Before getting any food, Booth had no intention of making a fire. He knew very well that in the wild, every fire has to earn its keep. Before he's even seen a scrap of food, he's not about to pour his scarce strength into a stack of firewood. Booth goes out to check his snares and traps, and upon reaching the riverbank, he finds that the snare he set yesterday has indeed caught a beaver. For a moment, Booth froze, stunned that God would send him a beaver to face the one thing he was worst at, primitive living, just as 4 rabbits had driven Lake to make fire. For now, Booth chose to handle the beaver first. He picked up a sturdy stick and slammed it down on the beaver's head. It was a 40-pound beaver, a haul big enough to completely change the opening of his game. But his ferro rod was gone. He had the meat, yet fire was a barrier he couldn't pass. The larger the beaver, the sharper the irony of Booth's situation, especially with grizzlies so common here. Booth decided to butcher the beaver right on the riverbank, mainly so grizzlies wouldn't follow the scent back to his shelter, and drawing grizzlies to camp. Second, to skip hauling a 40-pound carcass over a long distance, wasting energy. When the animal died, the clock on spoilage started, and Booth had to hurry, opening it and dressing it so the organs and body heat were removed. Then he could buy more time with this 40-pound beaver in a world without fire. After finishing with the beaver, Booth tried once more to make fire, not with a bow drill, but with the small remnant of ferro material he still had, scraped as oxidized residue from the fire pit after he realized his ferro rod had burned. As long as stuff wasn't ruined, there was a chance scraps could spark. But once he tried, Booth realized it simply wouldn't work. God's test for Booth wasn't over yet. Just then, the rain began to fall.
It's so damn rainy. I'm so mad at myself. Damn it.
In that instant, Booth began to regret his decisions, berating himself for not saving a coal, for not keeping that fire going continuously. Without fire, he reckoned he could go hungry and last 2 weeks, but saw no sense in surviving like that. After thinking it through, Booth decided to tap out.
This is David Booth. I'm officially tapping out. I would have never guessed I'd been out this quick, but I couldn't recover from that first mistake.
One mistake like that will just end it for you.
4 days, sucker.
Booth's exit was a real pity. He had found water, caught a 40-pound beaver, and briefly had a real chance to turn things around. But after the ferro rod was destroyed, fire became a barrier he could not pass. With the temperature at only 9 degrees, gutting the beaver actually bought him a little more time. He could still have tried primitive fire making, hunting for dry heartwood and tinder fungus, and tried a bow drill, grinding out a final chance. But Booth stopped betting. He didn't lose for lack of animals. He lost because when the fire died, his confidence died with it.
It's harsh and wet and windy, and I am not confident in my skill in friction fire. I don't think I can do it.
After Booth tapped out, the beaver still didn't go to waste. Its meat and hide went to the Gitchine First Nation. The next contestant to appear is Aaron, who doesn't show up on camera until day 2. He shows us how cramped the shelter he slept in last night is, and how snugly he closed the entrance, just enough to keep the mosquito swarms out. Aaron, unlike the others, doesn't treat food as his top priority. He hefts a 50-kilogram log onto his shoulder. Aaron is putting up a permanent log cabin shelter, and his plan is to get the shelter done as fast as possible, then throw himself completely into hunting and fishing. Watching him use such heavy logs to build his shelter, you can see Aaron isn't a regular guy. His background is a level most people never touch. Aaron has played football, ice hockey, and been a combat boxer. Each of those sports alone builds the daily strength to make hauling logs for a shelter feel almost easy. On top of his physical conditioning, Aaron is a very capable ice fisherman. As a kid, his grandfather took him to live in the wild. More crucially, Aaron has experience hunting moose. This season, moose may be the upper limit for contestants taking big game. Before going after big game, Aaron chooses to complete his shelter first. He plans to use logs to build a simple slanted lean-to. Each log he selects being close to 3 meters long. Hauling these 50-kilogram logs back and forth, every drag is a direct drain on his energy. For Aaron, this strain is familiar. Football, ice hockey, and combat sports have hardened his body for full contact work. Aaron still feels this work is brutally hard. From another angle, it really shows how extreme Roland's food shelter is. While he's cutting wood, Aaron hears squirrels chattering nearby. He snatches up his bow and closes in to hunt. He's eager to bag a squirrel to use as fishing bait. Before his shelter's even done, he's already planning an automatic fishing setup so that while he's grinding at heavy labor, there's a chance to bring in food. He hasn't got bait, and now a squirrel has appeared in front of him. He's not letting a chance like this go. Bow in hand, Aaron steps up to welcome this special guest.
Man, I haven't missed like that in years.
What the?
3 shots in a row, each one missing by just a hair. A hunter like Aaron, who almost never slips up, keeps making mistakes in this seemingly simple hunt. Aaron curses himself as an idiot, the sting of failure still fresh, and then a light rain starts. It's not heavy, but it hits right at his lowest point. The drizzle flips a switch in Aaron. He refuses to let this squirrel escape. He picks up his bow again and heads back into the brush to hunt. Soon, the squirrel's chatter starts nearby. It's moving up and down the tree. With his earlier miss fresh in mind, Aaron doesn't rush the shot. He waits for the right opening. As soon as the squirrel comes down, Aaron knocks and lets fly.
Oh my God. Got him.
The little squirrel probably dies without ever understanding how it managed to enrage the hunter in front of it. With this squirrel, Aaron can move forward with his survival plan. He skins it, removes the bones, and takes out the organs. Its innards smell sharp and carry a high fat content. Using it as fishing bait is ideal, and Aaron has 3 automatic rigs set along the riverbank. Besides fishing, Aaron's hunting strategy is to go after large game, with moose as his primary target. Moose calls don't just attract mates, they also draw in predators, grizzlies and wolves. Aaron walks river with his bow, scanning for signs. With the rut underway, moose are more active, and as the vegetation thins out, they're easier to track. Aaron already has extensive experience hunting moose, and he's confident he can take one down. Some bull tracks in the dirt grab his attention, but they seem a few days old. Aaron keeps exploring along the shore when suddenly something ahead makes him gasp. It's so far away that without binoculars, it's hard to see clearly, but Aaron guesses it's a grizzly. That's the downside of using moose calls as a lure. You could draw in grizzlies or wolf packs, so he stays back and won't approach. Stays at the riverbank, waiting for the bear to leave. Around 1 p.m., Aaron resumes searching for moose sign, and for safety, he arms his bear, spray, and pulls out a bear banger. This device can produce a loud explosive crack, triggering a bear's instinct to flee danger. A heap of bear droppings on the shore backs up Aaron's hunch. Research shows bears usually attack humans only when startled or when defending their cubs. Across earlier Alone seasons, there were plenty of bear encounters. For example, in Season 1, when a contestant was scouting for a shelter site, he looked to see 2 black bears in a tree. They stared at each other, but did not attack. In contrast, Roland in Season 7 hunted down an innocent bear. Back to the scene. Aaron discovers animal sign along the riverbank. At a glance, he knows it's from a beaver. The beaver's flat, paddle-shaped tail leaves drag marks on the ground. That's promising. He may get to hunt a beaver. Later, returning, he spots 1 rod-bout ovo.
How the got a fish?
He sees the auto rig snagged something. As Aaron drags it in, he's floored by the sight. A pike weighing 6.5 kilos and a full meter long. This fish will give Aaron around 2,500 calories in the brutal pace of the Arctic. That's barely enough to carry him through a day, but it still gives Aaron the energy he needs to finish his shelter.
Oh, first fish, baby. Yes.
The next contestant to appear is Andrew. He seems a bit awkward on camera, still adapting to this self-shot way of filming. It's almost unreal to think that this seemingly greenhorn is in fact a seasoned archery instructor. His precision and steadiness come from years of practice, and he's logged countless hours on the water. On camera, he looks a little green, but out in the wild, he's a completely different creature. Like the others, he wants to hunt rabbits. Most contestants set simple snares along rabbit trails, but Andrew chooses an open spot beneath a tree. where hares often travel under the branches because these paths offer cover from predators and make their movements safer. In this situation, simple snares aren't very practical, so Andrew decides instead to build a rabbit trap. He gathers 4 branches, which he'll use to construct the trap. Andrew pushes the branches into the ground in a square pattern, creating a frame. He ties snares onto the branches, almost blocking off every direction, so that any rabbit passing through is forced to go right through the traps. He then sticks smaller branches around it for camouflage, and a perfect rabbit trap is finished. But relying on a single trap for hunting is far from enough. After returning to his shelter, he starts using paracord to make more snares, which can be used to hunt squirrels. Before the shelter is even built, passive hunting for food becomes especially important. Before he has any real food, Andrew refuses to pass up anything remotely edible. He has just picked a 7-wood nut. It's bitter and woody, a bit like pine needles or a very unripe nut.
Yeah, man. I'm just going to catch a fish.
And chewing it is like gnawing on bark. Andrew would sooner go hungry than touch that stuff again. With his strength fading out there, he refocuses on the river's fish, sitting on the bank to rig up his tackle. His aim is to take this season's title. Trusting outside help is okay, but reality hits. After dozens of casts in a row, he still comes up empty, and he's nearly lost faith in the river. On his way back, he checks the nearby snares and finds that one has successfully caught a squirrel. This seemingly insignificant catch changes everything. Instead of simply processing it as food, he focuses on using it in a more efficient way. Andrew plans to use the squirrel's entrails as fresh bait and throw them back into the same stretch of water. His hunting logic is completely rewritten. The 10th contestant to appear is Borti, the youngest of the 10 experts in this challenge. Though young, his survival experience surpasses his peers. Years in the wild have already equipped him to hunt big game. At just 24, he's already a seasoned wilderness hunter. Borti starts scouting right away, and the fresh moose tracks on the ground thrill him. But soon he notices plenty of grizzly prints too. Out here, it's only a matter of time before he meets one. The idea makes Borti draw a sharp breath. As a hunter, Borti's top priority is food. He can gather berries day to day to stay alive, but hunting for protein is his main survival strategy. Borti plans to set up lots of snares and traps to passively catch food. Suddenly, a group of grouse catches his eye. Several birds are feeding along the bank ahead. Borti eases closer with his bow. This walking meal is too precious to lose.
Missed.
Unfortunately, his first arrow misses. While the grouse are still nearby, Borti presses the attack.
Got him.
To Borti, this grouse is far more than just one meal's worth of protein. He'll turn the feathers into fishing lures and the bones into needles. He breaks the grouse down into a complete survival kit, an example of extreme resource efficiency.
What a way to start this competition off.
Before he's even chosen a campsite along the shore, he's already launched into his fishing plan. Gear ready, Borti grabs his bow to scout a fishing spot, and to his surprise, he sees beavers in the river. An incredible hunting opportunity, but the rules bar them from bow hunting beavers. Until he's built proper traps, those beavers are safe for now. Borti doesn't linger. Instead, he throws himself fully into fishing. The beavers nearby signal that these waters are rich in fish, so his chances of success here are much higher. Sure enough, his hunch is quickly confirmed.
Nay, day 2.
When he lands a pike, a dream start. Borti's face brightens with confidence. The moment he grabs the fish, he was thinking of using its entrails as bait for fishing, whether it's the grouse hunted or this pike that's still not quite dead in the hands of the Hound King Borti. Its guts are already earmarked for the next hunt. Yet the story isn't over. As Borti turns to fix his fishing line, he unexpectedly spotted a moose in the distance on the far side of the river. Borti reacts, grabs his bow and arrows, crosses the river, tracking the moose by its trail. At this point, Borti is downwind of the moose, an ideal position that keeps his scent from being detected. After spotting the moose, Borti moves in carefully with his bow. Now the moose is just 30 meters from Borti, halfway through the river crossing. The timing, terrain, and Borti's position create an ideal hunting opportunity. But Borti holds his bow and arrow raised, yet still doesn't take the shot.
Taken a long shot. No point. It's only day 2. It's still so hot. But I decided not to.
He lowers his bow for a practical reason. At 11 degrees, without storage, that moose could spoil in 6 hours. If he couldn't store that moose properly, the meat might start spoiling in just 6 hours. Borti's choice was above criticism, yet the wisest move can also be the one you regret most. A single cautious pause can cost you the season's best chance.